First things first, we need to let you all know that this meeting will be recorded. I think as a record for as a kind of record of the meeting. I hope that's okay with everyone. I think yeah, recording's now started. So we've got quite a jam-packed agenda with a strict time schedule to fit everything in. So it's going to be relatively militaristic in my approach to each subject. So as Kate suggested, if you can all please stay muted, and if you do want to ask any questions or raise any points throughout the meeting, please either raise your virtual hand or your physical hand, and myself or Kate will try and come to you as soon as we're able to. So the first thing on our meeting agenda is some information on the community speed watches. So sadly, we were hoping that Sergeant Short or one of the PCSOs from Quinton Police would be able to join us, but I think we've caught them on their off-shift pattern, sadly. So me and Kate can jump in as she sees fit, but a bit of a kind of overview of where we are with speed watches. As all of you will know, speeding's a big problem in Quinton, and one of the things which we've tried to do to get a bit of a handle on it is aid the police in terms of having a bit more of a presence and being kind of visible in terms of tackling the speeding. So we got in touch with Sergeant Short, who referred us to one of the PCSOs, PCSO Potter, Darren Potter, who came out to meet with me, Kate, and Paul Weston a few weeks back, and essentially talked us through how speed watches typically work. So the kind of short overview is that members of the community can come forward, and then the PCSOs will meet with them, hand over some guidance and kind of rough procedure to read over, and then from that point they're able to attend speed watches. So it is exactly what it says on the tin. In effect, we have a speed gun and a notepad with a pre-populated form that the police provide with us. And in short, the PCSOs come down. We wear the high vis that says community speed watch on it to ensure that we're kind of legitimate. And so long as we have a clear line of sight, and so that we're not kind of catching speeders out, if you like, because that would be, I think, an entrapment. So we have to be a little bit careful on that. We then sit with a speed gun for an hour or so, record any vehicles that are travelling 10% plus 2 miles per hour over the speed limit. So in a 30 zone, that would be 35 and over. And then from that, those registration numbers are recorded. The police take those away and will then issue letters to the owners of those vehicles, essentially telling them that they've been caught speeding by Community Speed Watch. And that letter is, in effect, kind of a warning, if you like, to make them aware that, you know, we're out and we are looking at them for speeders in Quinton. So sadly, it's not a speeding ticket, which would have been the absolute dream if we could just borrow the gun from the police and grab as many speeders as we can. But it will hopefully act as a bit of a disincentive, to the people that we catch speeding that receive that letter. But I think also having community members that are stepping up into these kind of speed watch sessions, and we're hoping to have at least kind of one a month and operate them on different roads around Quinton over the next few months. Having that kind of visual awareness that there are speed cameras of sort in operation should act as a broader deterrent. Kate, does that kind of summarise? Do you want to jump in at all?
Yes, I think we've got to be very careful. We didn't actually enjoy it, but it was a very good experience, and it was incredible the difference that it made, having 4 or 5 people standing on the road in high vis jackets, pointing something at the traffic. They visibly slowed down. Well, all but 10 of them did. So what we're doing is we're very keen to get members of the community to join us. We've got another session booked towards the end of this month. We won't say where and we won't say exactly when, because we don't give away everything. But if you're interested in joining us, Dominic, myself and Paul have all said we're going to bring 2 or 3 other people with us. The police will give you the on-the-spot training. You can't that night then go on and do the speed watch, but then you can stay and observe it, see how it works. And then the next time out, we want to be able to hand over to the community so it becomes a real community effort. In the meantime, if you've got spots, we know where we think the speeding hotspots are, and we've been advised by the PCSOs as well, so we know where we're picking. But if you have got particular issues around speeding that you want to report on an area that's irregular, you can report it at birmingham.gov.uk/speed reporting rather. And all you need to do there is to give the location, and they need something quite accurate, house number on the road will give an idea. And then an idea of what the problem is. So the police are aware of some of the regular problems we get around the boy races around West Boulevard, Quinton Road, West Ridgeacre. But if there is anything you want to report, it's just birmingham.gov.uk/speed reporting if you want to do it, or let Dominic or myself know. But if anybody would like to join us, we're more than happy, and it really does need to be something which is community led. So more than happy for you to join us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kate. And I think, Kate, you probably agree with me that our kind of view of this is that once we've done a couple of these sessions and some kind of key community members have come forward, this is something which we would like to kind of hand over to a few key people to kind of operate and run in conjunction with the PCSOs. It very much doesn't need to be driven by either myself or Kate, and medium term, we'd like to ensure that there is that kind of that team or a group of people that are happy to kind of step in and operate them. Elliot, shall I bring you in if you've got a question?
Couple of quick questions. Times of day. What times of day can this be operated?
So the only real stipulation is that we can't be doing it in the dark. So we're slightly bound by the shift pattern and the hours of working hours of the PCSOs that obviously attend and support the speed watch. So typically, if they're on an early shift, I think they finish before around, is that 7:30 or is that their late shift, Kate? Can you recall? But in short, we're bound by when the PCSOs are available. So we'll try and give them, every speed watch we do, we'll set up the next one 4 weeks in advance. So we tried, the last one we did, I think, was at 5 o'clock, which we were hoping we'd get some rush hour traffic. Appreciate we were on Simmons Drive, and some of the feedback that I've seen on Facebook is that we should have been there slightly later, because the kind of the racing types tend to come out kind of 6 o'clock, 6:30 onwards. So I think we'll probably try, as we do different roads, try different hours and see what kind of works and what seems to be most effective.
That really was the point I was going to make. That, I mean, doing it at rush hour on Croft Down Road, you don't get much speeding. Can't move. The other one, what about very high speeds?
In what sense?
Well, you're recording people doing exceeding what is the rule of thumb of 10% plus 2. What happens if somebody's doing 50?
As far as I'm aware, it would be the same thing. We'd issue them with a letter. I suppose that the PCSOs, I think they might have the power to perhaps pull people over. I'm not 100% sure on that, if they're authorised as police officers would be. We're fairly restricted in obviously being community members that are doing that. We wouldn't be able to pull them over and arrest them on the spot, unless you know anything about civilian arrests, which I did ask about, but the PCSOs didn't seem to be up there on giving me too much information.
If we did record a number of people who were doing 10, 20 miles an hour faster than the speed limit, then we would be alerting the police that they should be stepping in. But no, we're not set up to call in the cars to have that word. Because I've been out with police previously where we've had the police officers, and they have further down the road then called in the people that we've caught speeding and had a word in their ear there and then. So, but I think as a community speed watch, we can't. But if we did get regular high speeds, then we'd report it to the police and ask them.
I'm just concerned that people that exceed the speed limit and clock up, say, 35 or 36 miles an hour could be an accident, and lack of attention. And I don't say that they should. Whereas those that are doing some of the maniac speeds we see, who really are a danger, you'd like to think there was a bit more follow-up than. Sure. Yeah, thank you.
No, so we can certainly pose that question to the police and to the PCSOs and see if there's a better mechanism for us to highlight and flag those drivers. Barry, do you want to come in quickly?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Two things. First thing, obviously Wolverhampton Road South is on the circuit for the races anyway. Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, sort of 3:30 till 5. That's when we get a fair few people really exceeding the speed limit. So if there's any chance of doing that out on the Wolverhampton Road at those times, that would be good. Secondly, advertising what's happening. This needs to be on the Quinton page and so on, because otherwise it just becomes something that somebody might say, oh, they were out with the speed camera there the other day, but everybody feels it's such a one-off, it's not worth bothering about. But if there's a bit more publicity about it, and then people see it, they'll clock it more and pass the word on. It'll only be temporal. We all know that.
That's a good suggestion. I know that Kate's put some things out on her social media, and I've done the same and shared them into the community pages on Facebook to encourage people to get in touch with us, to get involved. Right. But certainly, I think we'll probably knock something up and put a poster up on the notice boards to say to get in touch with us.
Yeah, or even I think anybody who sees what either Dominic or I put on the, if they can make sure they get on the community pages and spread the word, you know, like them, retweet them, you know, whichever format we've used, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And the more people think that there are people out there doing it, and the more people that we get involved, the better.
And actually, final thing to say is that what's quite valuable is that the average driver that goes past and sees us doing a community speed watch doesn't actually know that they're not going to get a speeding ticket. So having that kind of that ignorance, if you like, is probably valuable. Is there anything else very briefly? Any speed watches? No, fantastic. So I think next on the agenda is a brief update from myself and then from Kate. So I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. Just a few kind of short updates on some of the things which I was kind of looking at or working on that residents have got in touch with me about pre-election and immediately after my election. So there were some kind of some points raised about road safety and pedestrian safety. So some people may have seen that I had a petition going to try and get some bollards installed where Mayswood Grove, where the garage access path is to Simmons Drive, because there'd been at least one instance of vehicles going down there at high speed and cutting across the pedestrian path. So Marie Brown from Highways has very kindly quoted that up for me, and it's around the kind of £3,000 mark to install those bollards along Simmons Drive to prevent that from happening. Equally, at the top of Faraday Avenue, where there's the pedestrian path that cuts between Faraday and Quinton Road West, again, people had asked me to see if we could put in some bollards there. Having done a site visit with Marie, we decided that actually double curbing would be more effective there, because bollards don't tend to work as well. So double curbing is, as you'd expect, one curb, and then there's a secondary higher curb so that no vehicles would be able to drive at it, certainly not at any speed. Again, same kind of issue there. The costing coming in for that is around the £3,000 mark, which means that for this financial year, we don't have any budget left from our kind of highways allocation, because as you'll all know, Kate has allocated that for the Simmons Drive speed cushions, which will be installed later this year. So we've got our hands tied on that one for the time being, but that's something which we can explore when we come into next financial year. Other thing briefly is that I've been trying to sort out the flooding that happens outside Queen's Park on Court Oak Road. When it's very heavily raining, that immediately gets submerged within a couple of hours. And the issue that I've discovered is that Cllr came out and they looked at their drains, which weren't blocked at all. They were absolutely fine. So they directed me to the sewers below the drains, had Severn Trent out to look at it, and they are arranging for a kind of full camera inspection 100 metres in either direction of Queen's Park entrance to see if there's any issues with their sewer. But it may just come down to old sewers which don't have enough capacity for the water. So kind of waiting to see what kind of further developments there are on that one. And then finally, from me, and I know that Kate will echo this, I did a recent drive around with Stuart from Cllr and highlighted lots of the potholes and roads that needed attention across the whole ward. And generally speaking, most of the potholes that we see as we've driven around are already marked up. You'll see the white lines. And Stuart assures me that if they've been marked up, then they're on the list for repair and they will get to them. I did highlight that some of them had been marked up for a very long time, and it's hard to tell which ones are new markings and which ones are old markings. But you will have seen that quite a few of them have started to get filled in slowly, gradually. So I will certainly keep up the pressure on Cllr to try and get those bumped up the priority list. Sadly, it's a citywide operation, so there's a very long list, as you can imagine. So think that's broadly my update. Okay.
Okey-dokey. I was tasked with a couple of things. I've been asked to find out about the charging points for electric cars. We've got phase ones being introduced where they're going to put 197 fast charging points and 394 rapid charging points. Don't ask me the difference between a fast and a rapid charging point. They're mainly going to be on highways, car parks and public lands, and the key locations initially are going to be within the city centre. But they are going to look at strategic routes on what they call points rather on what they call a route network into local areas. So there'll be charge and go ones rather than, so there'll be the quick chargers rather than the residential ones, which I know our residents were interested in. But looking at the locations for those, they are looking initially at Harborne and Northfield in the southwest, but they're also looking at a second wave, which will be in Quinton, of fast chargers on the roads leading out to the M5. They have said to me that most or 70% of dwellings in Birmingham have charging positions, either driveways or other areas that where it can happen. So they're concentrating in the areas of the city where there's terraced housing or flats where people can't have their own kind of co-located charging, and they are looking at doing lamppost charging and curbside charging, so they will be looking at that. But they're also looking at supermarkets, hotels and what they call places of destination to develop on private land, and I believe Tesco's is one of the big ones near us, but there are also some, I think the Harborne Fitness Gym is going to be used, so they are rolling those out and they're coming. People are asking about 4 dwellings, the children's centre. As we all know, it was damaged by fire last year. That bit that was particularly damaged by fire was found to be unsound and demolished, but the front bit was found to be stable. And initially, they thought that with some investment, they might be able to do something. But during the last year, there's been extensive vandalisation of the building, and the costs to reinstate it are now far more than the actual value of the property. So the plans is to assess the cost of demolition, secure the site, and then to establish what they say the future use of the site. So I will keep on top of that and keep you kept in the loop on that one. The Quimborne, I went down to the Quimborne. I've had a chat with Carl, who's the manager there, and one of the directors, and I'm arranging a meeting with Carl, the existing board of directors, and then some others that I feel might be able to help and support the Quimborne as it moves from its phase of being closed back into the real world as we come out of lockdown. So we're looking with people like Gateway Family Services, the Edgbaston Neighbourhood Networking Service and tours, and we're looking at putting a meeting together where we can look at sources of advice and support to support the Quimborne, to make it more of the community centre that we feel it should be. It really is right in the heart. It's right in the heart of Ridgeacre. It's slap bang in the middle of Quinton. And I'm really hoping that as we move out of lockdown back to more normality, we should be able to work with the Quinton and with the board of directors to make it a more successful community centre. So I'll put that as a regular thing and report back on that. But so far, everybody I've got in touch with is really very keen to help the Quimborne to move itself more into the 21st century, to get a proper model of how it can be the kind of place that we'd all like to see it be. Delighted to say that Blooming Quinton's coming on fine. That's something that I started some time ago when Jude, one of our residents, got in touch with me. She kind of adopted initially the planters outside Quinton Road West shops, and she did that during lockdown as a little project. She got in touch with me because she and not just ran out of money, but she needed a bit of help, needed more doing, and I was absolutely delighted when we got a group of residents together, and we've really started something that is really special. And I think Peter's going to talk about that when he does a bit of his feedback. So I'm just really pleased the way that's taken on at pace. As far as the resurfacing goes, I know Dominic's mentioned I went out with Stuart as well. I've got my big issues are the two main valley roads, Highfield Lane and Simmons Drive, and then what I call the triangle. So Ridgeacre, West Boulevard and Quinton Road West. And that is absolutely on my top list, particularly with the valley roads. I think while we're doing the speed cushions, we need to be looking at resurfacing at the same time. It's stupid to do one and then the other. And then I've got a number of little roads in the kind of middle of Quinton, that Ridgeacre, that's kind of bounded by those roads. Places like Wedgwood and Faraday and Fleming, some of those are really bad. Gauzy is really bad. Bolney, Thursby, World's End. So there's a whole bunch of roads, and I will just continue to petition for those and take pictures where I can. And I tell you, I'm getting acutely aware of really where those bumps are now. I'm riding a bicycle more, because I'm telling you, it's bad enough when you hit a pothole in a car, but when you hit one on a bicycle, it's terrible. So we will keep on that. The really good news coming out from the City Council is the 7 million that they've got allocated for the streets and for the refuse, and that is something really, really big that we can all get involved in. So there's been an 18% increase in the amount of fly tipping that we've had across the city. It goes up to, I think we've had more than 17,000 tonnes of fly tipping was removed from the city streets last year, including, for example, last week we took 100 tonnes of fly tipping out of one ward, out of Cllr ward. The day the students all moved out on the 30th of June, we got 100 tonnes of fly tipping that day, and I think the next day they've got another 50 tonnes of fly tipping. If you look across the city, we're somewhere in the middle. We had 500 tonnes of fly tipping removed from our streets in the last year. The worst wards, it's up to 2,000, and that would be places like our inner city wards, much, much higher. And then the leafy suburbs of the likes of Sutton Coldfield, their wards are having under 50 tonnes of fly tipping removed in a year. The council's put together lots of new things. We've got 12 new digital cameras coming to form a visible deterrent, and they will be targeting hotspots. They're legally compliant and will be pulling up the kind of Birmingham wall of shame. We've got some council refuse clearances coming with graffiti removal. We're going to have highways enforcement with the police and waste disposal partners. It's all tied in with housing, so it will be a really multi-agency response to dealing with fly tipping across this city. Areas of the city are worse than others. We're not too bad here in Quinton. As I mentioned, we got Selly Oak, it's been a problem. Both Dominic and I have now got equipment to support any community groups that want to take part in removing fly tipping. We can do equipment, we've got training, we've got support. We can arrange to have the refuse removed once you've done that. We've also got some enforcement officers now, and they will be deployed across the city, including areas like Quinton. And we've got some teams, 3 new teams to tackle graffiti. So it's something that the city is really putting forward. We've got dedicated deep clean teams, dedicated removal teams. And what we're going to do in order to support people who can't get things down to the tips, we've got some mobile units with specialist recycling trucks where we'll be identifying areas in wards where you can bring things that you can't get to the tip, and they will be removed. So that's a really, really big push from Birmingham City Council to clean up the city. So if anybody is interested and wants to organise community litter picking in their area, then we can do that for you. We can provide you with all the kit. We can provide you, if you're just someone who likes to go out for a walk and want to pick up some litter as you go, and I can see we've got people on here like Bina and Peter who do that. I think, Barry, you've got litter pickers now, so we've got lots of people who do this. If you want to just have some, so when you go out for a walk with your friends, you can do some litter picking. We can drop you off and you have your own personal kit as well. So do get in touch if anybody is interested in that. I think I've probably got loads of other things, but those are the main things on my mind for today, and I don't want to take all the meeting up. Thanks very much, Dominic.
Thanks, Kate. Tony, did you have a question? I saw your hand up earlier, about 5 minutes ago. No, you're fine. Excellent. Good. So, right, next up, we've got a highways update from Marie Brown. Marie, are you there?
Hello, yes, I'm here, Councillor. Good evening, everybody.
Over to you.
Right, okay, well, I'm not going to be talking for as long as you and Councillor Holmes, but the only highway update I have is the proposed traffic, well, it's not proposed anymore, it's going ahead. The traffic calming scheme, the cushions. Oh, sorry, I've got my camera on, have I? Sorry. Oops. Apologies. The speed cushions. Spoke to the contractor today and they should be on site by the end of this month at the very latest. Well, the signs and posts and everything's been ordered and they're just waiting really for their slot. Of course, you've got to let highways know, submit all your TMP and your traffic management proposals and everything, and they're going to make sure there's no clashes. So that is the date, by the end of this month at the very latest, they'll be on site. Once they start, probably take about 4 weeks for the works to be completed. It's a very, very big scheme. I've got to admit, it's my biggest scheme. Been with the council since 1986 and this is my biggest scheme. So I'm looking forward to the start date, and the residents, you'll see me out on site more often. Well, that is the update, nothing else, unless anybody else has got any questions for me.
Can I ask you the dreaded question regarding Quinton Road West resurfacing, and if we've got a date or if we can push for it?
No, I've been trying to get a date from Cllr. They're just holding their cards close to their chest. They won't even round by me. I was out jogging this morning and they're on site, and I asked them, well, when's this road going to be done? Well, yeah, it's in the programme. I said, yeah, I know it's in the programme, but they're not giving out any dates. I've tried going through Stuart. I was Stuart, but even Stuart can't give me a date either. Can't answer that question, Councillor.
Very good. Thank
So
you
it's
very
not
much.
just us then, Dominic.
Fine, good stuff. So we're a couple of minutes ahead of schedule, which is fantastic. Paul from Tours, can I hand over to you? Oh, sorry, before we do, Tony has asked, I know it's just about messaging. Carry on, Paul, sorry.
Thanks, Councillor. I've just got a few slides to share, so hopefully you can see that okay. Yeah. Okay, my name's Paul Moore. I'm Resources Manager at the Active Wellbeing Society in Birmingham. We're a community benefit society. We work very closely with Birmingham City Council and residents and partners in the community. I've been asked to give a little bit of a brief update as to where we are with the LIFT project, which was some funding that was made available a couple of years ago. First of all, the 4 community notice boards have now been all installed. I know there was some frustration about the pace at which the remaining 2 notice boards have been installed, but following consultation with residents, Councillor Booth getting involved with Birmingham City Council as well, we did manage to agree the remaining 2 locations for the notice boards, and they were installed relatively recently. So all 4 boards are now in situ, and they are there and available for the community to use going forward. In terms of the locations, there's just a map there, just showing you where they are, so relatively spread out across Quinton ward. At the last meeting of the Neighbourhood Forum, my colleague Anthony Sharples presented the results of a community survey that we'd undertaken with residents in the community. That particular survey explored the ways in which residents find out about information in the area at the moment and how they'd like to keep in touch. And it also explored the possibility of a community website. The reason we undertook this particular survey was we had previously been working with residents to come up with a number of designs for a website, but it was thought that some more community engagement work was actually needed before that to deem whether a website was actually still relevant, given that the LIFT project and the funding bid for it was written several years ago. Now, there was interest, as my colleague Anthony presented at the last forum meeting, in terms of a community website, with the main purpose being to promote community events and activities and to share local news and stories. However, what did come out of that was that social media was actually the most preferred way to receive information and to communicate with the community. In addition, social media is also the main method of communication that would encourage residents to become involved in a community project. Therefore, at the last meeting, we did recommend that we thought residents may not engage with the local website. and actually they would prefer to have information pushed to them via social media. And I think since the project came about, we have seen a number of Facebook groups in particular that are very active in the Quinton area. So things have moved on a little bit since this funding stream came about. What we have done as well, since the results of that survey were presented, we've agreed to work with residents and partners on the Quinton directory, which I know was spoken about last time. And we have also said that we'd be happy to support with printing and distribution costs if that is the preferred option of how residents may wish that to be printed and distributed. It may be that people decide they prefer that to be electronic rather than in hard copy, but we have put that out as an option. We've also been working with residents to help deliver the Best of Quinton event when COVID restrictions allow. We've said that we'll provide the insurance for that event and help assist residents with the paperwork and the risk assessments. I know at the moment residents don't want to go ahead just at this moment in time because of the COVID restrictions, but we are still ready and willing to help with that event and also to support with some activity on the day. Since the last meeting, we've also received a request for a budget summary for the project. We will aim to have this ready by the end of the month. If residents do wish us to come back to the next meeting to present that, then either myself or one of my colleagues will be happy to do that. I just thought it might be helpful as well just to, oh, sorry if I, can you still see the screen okay there, Councillor?
Yeah, it seems fine to me. What else is Tor's doing at the moment? Oh no, now it's gone.
Oh, can you see it okay still, sorry?
No, it just disappeared for me.
Oh, bear with me a second. Got a bit too keen with my mouse there. What else is the Active Wellbeing Society doing at the moment in the area? We offer a social prescription service at the following surgeries, which are used by Quinton residents: Ridgeacre House Surgery, Quinton Family Practice, Quimble Medical Practice, and also the Lordswood House Medical Practice. We're running a number of health walks in the area at the moment, one at Queen's Park and another setting off from Highfield Recreation Grounds. These are going ahead on a Wednesday at the moment. And we're also planning a coffee morning for patients from Harborne and Quinton at the Harborne Baptist Church. And again, this is due to start next month in August. And finally, just a more general slide on some of the work that tools are doing at the moment. As COVID restrictions are easing, we are now returning to delivering physical activity in person and interventions across the city, both in Birmingham and Solihull. As many of you all know, all of our activities and interventions that we deliver are free, and we've got a very much a heavy focus on helping those who live in the most deprived areas of the city. So the types of activities that we offer are around cycling, walking, running, activities in parks, active streets, which is around street closures and bringing communities together, and our community food work, which includes our mobile food van and a number of community cafes across the city. We also continue to have a virtual wellbeing offer. I've briefly touched on the social prescription services that we offer as well. And just finally, I think Councillor Booth touched on this already, but we do have a community development team and also fundraising team who may be able to assist you or your organisation as well. So I hope that's helpful in terms of a brief update, but I'm happy to take any questions.
That's great, thank you, Paul. There's a couple of hands up, so if I go to Elliot, who I think I saw up first.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Dominic. I've got a number of comments to make. I'm just looking at my notes. The two of the notice boards that have been up for about a year or so are falling apart. The quality's clearly not there. They're not well made. I think something needs to be done to get the supplier to correct the faults. Certainly the one at Highfield, you can see through the board. It's shrunk so much. It's made out of the wrong material. Secondly, on the survey for the website, I must remind you that actually the survey was listed in the work proposal as being the first task. And this was actually confirmed by Councillor Booth at the outset when she did ask me to try and assist where I could from my background. So what's actually happened was that the survey was not done lots of work seems to have been done that delivered nothing. And then we did a survey that showed that the website wasn't needed. The Quinton directory, I think the primary work on that is being done by Deb Ufton. So I'm not quite sure where that fits. On Best of Quinton, I spoke today with Jamie Harper, having written to Katie possibly 2 weeks back, saying we wanted to look at how we restarted the event. If you recall, the reason we came to a dead stop was that within the Best of Quinton, we were very clear that the event had to be held without any COVID restrictions, because the fundamental feature of the event would be that people mingled and learned about what was going on. However, the tour's health and safety team insists that we have to make a significant investment in risk assessment and mitigations for running an event with COVID. When I went back to Katie 2 weeks ago, she said you will be quite willing to start again, but these risk assessments would still be required, regardless of whether we thought that the event would be outside of the window of COVID restrictions. And the point that we made all the way through was that if COVID restrictions were required, the event would not be held. So I'm still at a loss, and I had a conversation with Jamie this morning about that, and I think he's coming back to you to try and understand it. Finally, the budget summary. This is absolutely vital. We had a £48,000 allocation in 2018 for delivery within a year. I think we need to know where the £48,000 has gone and how much of it still remains, what it's been spent on, by whom and where. So if you are going to provide this report by the end of the month, when will we get to actually review it? Thank you.
Elliot, Paul, do you want to come back on those points, and then we can go to Elaine, who I think's got.
I can do. I mean, I don't want to make excuses, but I haven't been involved, I'm afraid, with the project since the start. So it's only something I've been involved with in the last few months. In terms of the quality of the notice boards, I mean, my understanding is these are actually Birmingham City Council notice boards. They're the same quality and standard as what Birmingham City Council have elsewhere in the parks. I'm quite happy to ask somebody to have a look at the two notice boards you've raised, the ones that were installed first of all, to see whether there is anything we can do, or whether there's any sort of further improvements that might need making to them, you know, whether they perhaps need you know, some additional wood filler or whatever it is. I'm quite happy to do that, pick that up as an action from the meeting. I think the points on the survey, Elliot, are well made, and these are conversations that you and I have had outside of the meeting. I was merely highlighting the fact that we've now carried out that piece of work. In terms of the Quinton directory, our offer is to support Deb and the community with that piece of work. So that's where we're coming in terms of that, and my colleague Katie would be leading on that. In terms of the Best of Quinton event, it is still something we're quite happy to support both yourself and the community with. I'm afraid the reality of where we are at the moment is that COVID is still a factor. Yes, restrictions are looking like they're going to be eased towards the end of this month, but from a risk assessment point of view, COVID will continue to feature in many organisations who are responsible for hosting events. Now, to give you an example, you know, there would always be something in the risk assessment about you know, not encouraging people to have symptoms of COVID, for example, for attending. But I do think we're entering a period, hopefully within the next few weeks, that should make holding an event like that easier. So I'm quite happy to work with you. I'm actually in charge overall of health and safety at our organisation. So Shona, who I think you've spoken to as our health and safety lead, reports into me. So I think it's quite timely that, given the Prime Minister's announcement.
Sorry, Paul, sorry, Paul, on that, we've gone nowhere with Shona. There was an event held at the weekend in Lightwoods, and I didn't carry out a thorough survey, but when walking past it, no one was wearing a mask that we could see.
Could I briefly just come back for a moment? I'm conscious that
I
there are
don't want to take
conversations
you
that
into that whole discussion all the time.
yeah, there are conversations that are happening outside of the ward forum relating to the Best of Quinton event and how that can be facilitated. And I think for the benefit of the time that we've got, probably better that we try not to delve into the detail too much.
Sorry, Councillor, the offer's still there to support that event. And finally, on the budget summary, I've already commented and said we'll provide that information by the end of the month. The request I received was from Beverly, so that's who we'll return the information to in the first instance.
Thank you. Can I suggest that we take the next couple of questions in bulk, and then we can come back to you, Paul. So I think, Kate, you probably get to pull rank if you want to jump in.
Yeah, if that's all right. Just to say, the notice boards were actually made by Parks, so they were done at the Kings Heath branch, which is where Parks are based, and they're the standard ones that Parks use. They're the same spec that they use. Also, just something that Paul Moore might not be aware of. Initially, when tours came to work in Quinton, they did do a number of surveys around the surgeries. So I think that information will be underlying and in there somewhere. That was right at the start, so that would be back, I think, in 2018 or very, very early in 2019. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Okay, so if we go to Elaine and then to Barry.
Thanks. Paul, I'd sort of be interested in your mobile food banks, your food vans and community cafes. Can you tell us a little bit about what they entail and how we have access to them? So if we have events on, can we book them? How does it work?
So at the moment we've got.
Paul, should we just go to Barry and then you can respond in bulk? That's okay.
No problem. Yeah.
Sorry. You're muted at the moment, Barry.
Yeah, sorry. The notice boards I've been heavily involved with right from the word go. They've been two of them were in my shed. I've sanded them right down and repaired them as much as I can because they were stained wrong in the first place and the wrong materials. So the two new ones should hopefully last a bit longer than the two original ones. I've done a full report on it that I'll make available along with some other stuff soon. So, but I would thank Paul and the tours staff who sorted out the two sites that they've both gone into recently. The one at the Co-op in particular is high footfall, which is what we wanted way back in time.
Thanks, Barry. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, first of all, Barry, for your comments. And I think it'd be probably remiss of me if I didn't mention Barry Elliott, Peter Beck, and Vina, and a few others who've been instrumental in helping with the work around the notice boards as well. So thank you all for your contributions on those. Elaine, in terms of your question around food, we've currently got 4 community cafes across the city. Unfortunately, none of those are in the Quinton ward. I can circulate details of where they are. In terms of what we do, we use surplus food from supermarkets in order to make those meals. So there's no cost to anybody who requires it. As I did mention, we do have a mobile food van as well, which allows us to come out either to events or to things that might be happening in the community. So yes, that is a facility that you can book from us. And if you'd be interested in that for anything, please just get in touch with myself, and I'll be happy to follow that up with you. As you might be aware as well, during the pandemic, tours were commissioned by Birmingham City Council to do the emergency food distribution work across the city, and we did that in coordination with around 90 other voluntary sector partners across the organisation. At the height of the pandemic, I think we were dealing with around 65 tonnes of food, and to date we've distributed, I think, 77,000 food parcels last time I checked, during the period of the last 12 months through the pandemic. So food is a particularly important part of what we do as an organisation, and it's also a good tool to engage people and to engage them into activity as well.
Thank you very much, Barry. You're still, I've put you on mute, Barry. You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I think there's two distinct issues here. I think there's two distinct tours here. One is I requested that we had an update on the lift funding, which goes back to 2017, believe it or not, although tours arrived in 2018. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're talking about an evolution of tours when the request was to wrap up the lift funding and outstanding amounts from March of 2020. I think if we could divorce the two, then we might be in a better position to move forward. And so I'd like to suggest that we kind of sit down at some point and discuss where we're at in Quinton with funding in general, but going back to the lift in particular.
Thanks, Barry. Is there anything that you wanted to add or say, Paul?
I don't think there's anything I particularly need to add. I mean, I have had some meetings with Barry and Elliot earlier in the year outside of this meeting to address some of the outstanding issues around the lift project, but quite happy to continue those conversations outside of this forum as well, if that's what people would like. But as I said, as one of the next steps, we will bring back the budget information that was requested. And we'll send that to Beverly in the first instance, and if you want to bring that to the next forum meeting, that's not a problem.
Thank you. I think from a kind of broad perspective, I know there are a couple of documents that relate to kind of reports that Tours did in 2019. I think after the first kind of initial year of you guys being kind of in Quinton, I think using that document and any others that exist in terms of what was being planned at that point, that could be used to measure progress up to this point would be helpful. And equally, once we've got that kind of budget expenditure breakdown, that would be a useful kind of reference point for us to have that kind of assessment that you've asked for, Barry. I had a couple of quick questions. Also, we've got a couple of minutes left for this session. In one of the reports that I read from the 2019 Tours report, there was a couple of things that were mentioned, including I think a youth forum, an environmental activist forum, and thirdly, there's a mention of a reference group that would help and support or guide the work of Tours in Quinton. I was wondering if you can give me any kind of updates on whether those three areas were progressed, how they're operating, etc.
I've got to be honest with you, Councillor, it's not something I'm aware of. It predates my time at the organisation as well. I don't know whether Councillor Booth might have more information because she's been involved with the project longer than myself, but I can certainly come back to you with an update if not.
Yeah, so just to go back a little bit, the work that Tours did from the surgeons was actually what led to the social prescribing that the surgeons are now working with. And that also led us to the point where we had the Quinton reference group, which unfortunately have now decided that they don't want to continue any further because there were a lot of issues around. It wasn't a formal arrangement, so they kind of chosen not to work in that arena, though I think some of the people who were working in that arena are still there as individuals. So that's really all I can say on that. Okay,
and just kind of speaking broadly, if obviously Tours, I know, have got more kind of things in terms of the projects to kind of deliver on and to wrap up, if we were kind of looking to have kind of community engagement in there, and with the previous reference group no longer being kind of in that picture, is that something which we should be looking to kind of re-establish or to bring community members in to help kind of guide the work of Tours, Paul?
I mean, the way we work as an organisation is we're very much community focused. So rather than Tours kind of prescribing what we should and shouldn't do, we're interested in very much a bottom-up approach and working with communities in that way. So I'd kind of throw the challenge back, I guess. And, you know, if that's what the community wants, then yes, we try and do our best to support you as an organisation. But we try not to impose things on people. So we're, as I said, very much a bottom-up organisation.
Okay, sure. And Kate, did you know anything?
I can just say, so this is partly why I've got Tours working or moving towards working with the Quinton Board to help support the work that they're doing, and the reference group work has kind of moved more to like project work that people are just continuing with. I think, you know, the social prescribing and things like that. Some of it is still continuing.
And was there any kind of updates around youth forum or environmental activist group of any kind? I appreciate there is kind of one of those now, but I'm just interested in tours link with it.
As I said, I'm not, Councillor, aware of that. It predates my time and involvement with this particular project, but I can come back to you with some further information. That's not a problem.
Great, thank you. I think Barry, you've got a quick question, then we'll have to move on. You're still on mute. I think we might have lost him.
I think he's pressed the wrong button.
Lucky you, Paul. You dodged a question because the agenda is going to move on. So next up, we've got green spaces, and I think Peter Beck is going to speak to us about that area. Peter, are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Right. Thank you very much. Yes, I hope everyone has had the chance to look at the brief summary on nature recovery, which has been circulated. Just a few comments to add. Yes, there is plenty to be encouraged about. Nature recovery can be seen to be taking place in the larger green spaces. This year, for example, we've had extensive carpets of bluebells at Pittswood, and we are currently taking steps to increase the variety of appropriate flowering plants in the wood's understory, including along the streams, hedges, and banks. The recovery, however, is most obvious in Quinton Meadows Local Nature Reserve. It is really in full bloom at the moment. There is a wonderful display of wildflowers, including orchids and grasses, and as a consequence, there is a variety of bees, butterflies, and other insects taking advantage of them. In turn, this habitat provides food for birds and small mammals. The wildflower display should actually last for another month or so. If you haven't had the chance to see them, please take the opportunity as soon as possible. Anyone wanting a guided tour, please contact myself and Vina. It would be ideal, in fact, for a tour's health walk. Finally, just to say that this recovery will only succeed and carry on if we continue to generate interest amongst the wider public and recruit more conservation volunteers. It certainly has been noticed that it provides sort of informal recreation. Lots of people now coming to walk there. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Peter. Does anybody want to kind of discuss or have any comments around nature recovery and how we might be able to support Peter with that? Sam, I see a physical hand. You're muted at the moment.
What? Sorry? Yeah, it's not.
Sorry, Sam, you're still on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Dominic. Peter, can I first of all thank you and Vina and everybody else for all the work that you're doing in Quinton Meadows. As someone who walks there on a regular basis with my dog, it's been an absolute delight and joy. But can I just ask you about, and I'm sure you're aware of this, the area seems to be becoming an area for people to go and take drugs. When I've been walking there quite often, you know, the little gas canisters, the nitric oxide gas canisters, they're frequently found along the sides. And the other day when I was delightfully putting some dog poo in a bin, when I put it in, I noticed a load had been shoved in the bin. Now I did get in touch with the number on the notice board about that, but I just wonder, it's difficult to say what we can do about it because the site is open and if people want to go in there at night and do this sort of thing, but it is off-putting. And I know from walking my dog there and other people who've walked dogs there, they do come back with stuff in their mouths, which does show indications of drug paraphernalia. So I just wondered if we could just raise some awareness about that and people could be alert, because it would be a real real shame if people stopped using the meadows. People are just starting to discover it and enjoying this, and we're seeing more people with kids there as well. So could I just raise awareness about that and ask if we could just put it on an agenda somewhere? I don't know what we can do to discourage it, and I'm open to ideas, but I don't want my dog or any other dog to swallow something there, or a child to step on a needle, quite frankly. Okay, thanks, Peter.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I'd certainly support that. In fact, what we can do is to talk and explain to the members of the Quinton Meadows Consultative Committee, of which I am the chair and Vena's the treasurer.
No, you're the secretary.
I'm the secretary, yes, beg your pardon. No, I must, oh dear, I'll be in trouble now. Yes, so I'm the secretary and Vena's the treasurer, but we will actually speak to the other members, including the conservation workers, and see if we can also get a more frequent presence of the council's rangers, because we are having to really try and actually, not exactly do their job, but nonetheless try and fill in for them, because they're obviously under stress at the present time. They're being cut back. But nonetheless, they need to be aware as well, right? Remember, this is this wonderful treasure, particularly the local nature reserve, is a council facility, right? Thank you.
Barry,
Thanks, Peter.
with us with a hand up. If your question is about green spaces, then carry on, Barry. You are on mute, though.
Sorry, if I'm
To say you're on off mute on the symbol and not on mute with the words. Just a reaction. First of all, Peter and Vina, you know what I feel about the two of you. We have a fallouts at times, but I can't believe how much work you've put in over such a long time in Quinton with regards to volunteers we need. And I was glad to hear you mention the rangers, because there's only two. So tying the two together with what Sam was referring to, I would just say this. The reality is these gas cylinders are all over the place. You've only got to find a little tucked away place. The children's centre up at Highfield is one. So there is no answer to the gas cylinders, I'm afraid. And the only answer is, if you see them, pick them up and put them in a bin. That's the reality of Quinton. I go around picking litter up. I don't do a group or a photo, but I pick litter up. The one I bulk at is the masks. I pick the rest up with my hands, but I'm not picking masks up. And I think in the end, that's what a Quinton community does. It doesn't look to somebody to do it for them. And that's what I'm bothered about with litter picking and green spaces. People get up and do things themselves, hopefully. And I think a lot of people do. So I don't know if that makes any sense. Also, there is no free activities. If somebody's leading them from an organisation that pays, then actually there is a payment going on, whether it's a charity or not. So, but Peter and Vina in particular, thank you so much for everything you do in Quinton.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Barry.
Shall I move on to Blooming Quinton?
That's okay, if you're happy to. Yes, please.
Yep.
Okay. I hope everyone has had the chance to look at the very colourful PowerPoint presentation which Stu prepared for the last Quinton conversation meeting.
Sorry, Vina, I think we might be able to pull it up. Beverly, are you around with that presentation? We can put it on the screen at all.
I'll try and find it for you. Bear with me a second. Carry
Thank
on.
you. Sorry, Vina, carry on.
Okay, because I think it was sent out as part of the paperwork anyway. Jude, unfortunately, she's not available this evening. Something to do with Wimbledon, I think. So we were asked to cover, and the following comments have been agreed with her. And we've headed it a blooming movement. Blooming Quinton has its roots in a local resident, Jude Sloan, who originally took the initiative of planting flowers in the abandoned troughs outside shops on Quinton Road West. She subsequently approached Councillor Kate Booth about the possibility of assistance resulting in the initiative being embraced by the then active Quinton group and a successful funding bid to the Edgbaston Network Scheme, ENS. It was recognised just how appealing garden and wildflowers growing in small community spaces could be, both to people and to wildlife, such as bees and butterflies. These flowers could help nature recover from a long period of crisis and make a contribution to the health and well-being of Quinton's local residents. The planting outside the co-op in Quinton Road West has been warmly welcomed by local people, some of whom have made spontaneous donations of money and others have purchased flowers from local shops to add to the planting. This original focus has expanded to identifying and working on other small areas where there is scope for improvement, not just in terms of planting, but also removing litter and encouraging local residents to take an active interest in the work of the group. We are at the stage now where we need to consider the way forward for the group and what our aims and objectives should be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any kind of comments? I know there's quite a few Quinton, what do we call them? Quinton bloomers in the
Blooming Quinton.
blooming Quintoners, Quinton bloomers.
Quinton bloomers. Sounds a bit.
Well, less said about that, the better, perhaps. Barry, do you want to come in?
Am I still muted?
No.
No, you're fine.
Right, okay, that's it. Okay, I get it now. It was a pleasure to meet Jude. I met her when I went up to see the plants being put in by active Quinton members in particular. I went back up and took her some plants up as Patrick was leaving, and spoke to Patrick, which was good. And then I met Jude at the allotments, and she came over and looked at my garden because I've offered to line out some plants for anybody doing stuff to make Quinton in bloom. So yeah, and also she brings the average age down enormously, which is even better. So thank you, although she's not here, thanks to Jude, and thanks to everybody who's done that planting up there. They look excellent, but the problem will always be the maintenance over a long period of time, in particular the watering. But I understand somebody come forward recently to do some watering. So, but it looks very, very good.
Yep. Excellent.
Can I just ask though, who is the lead on Blooming Quinton?
I don't know.
It can't be just a random group of people. Somebody
we don't necessarily go in for leaders or leadership, Barry. We work together.
It was Jude who got it started, and then we got the active Quinton group, and then other people involved. So it is a genuine community group, to be honest with you. And I think as far as doing it, everybody seems to pitch in.
Yeah, I mean, individuals can just make a suggestion as to what we do next, and then people take it on board, or they, and we see how it goes.
And is that through the WhatsApp group?
It's just through whoever joins and comes along. Really, there is a WhatsApp group if people want to join it. But that's just the way we get word out to where people are doing things. And then, I'll put things on Twitter or put things on Facebook. But I mean, the one thing I'd really like to look at doing is linking people who have gardens and can't cope with people who live in tower blocks and don't have gardens and would love some space. We've got lots and lots of places where we've got elderly residents who can't manage, particularly front gardens. They're becoming a bit of an eyesore, and people would love to work with that. So I'd love to do some twinning of things like that. Yeah. But it's Jude's idea that kind of got taken by the community and moved forward. And it is, I'm not saying it's a leaderless group, but it's a group that just work cooperatively and collaboratively.
Sam, do you want to jump in? You are on mute at the moment, though. I think this will be the last meeting that we have to fight through this. So bear with us.
Can I just raise the question of maintenance, which Barry touched upon? And can I just thank the two businesses in particular on Quinton Road West, the Co-op and the veg box. If anyone turns up to either one of those with a watering can, they will give you water, and they've done it all the way through. And anyone can go and water the plants. So even if you don't live there and you just go in when it's open, they have been brilliant as providing water, and the co-op in particular provided plants and things. The women who work in there, in particular the manager as well, have been really, really supportive, and they really like what's happening because it's bringing people back to the area. People are taking a pride in it. So anyone can feel free to go do a bit of weeding and a bit of watering as well. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Hello. Yep.
Carry on, Peter.
Okay. Thank you, Dominic. Yes, I mean, I think Barry's made a very good point about maintenance, and particularly about watering. And obviously, you know, this movement will only succeed in the end if you get the local people, the people who live, you know, particularly closest to the green spaces where it's taking place. If they're really committed, if these people, you know, can be really involved. The other thing I think which needs to happen, if we're really going to spread to where there are, you know, some of them quite significant in terms of size, green spaces throughout Quinton, but they're owned by different sections of the council. So, for example, you know, you have housing, you have highways, you have education, and I think we were hoping that the Parks Accelerator program would in fact help to persuade these other council landowners to actually work with us to make them into, rather than as they are in some cases quite dirty and uncared for areas, to make them, you know, into something which local people would be really proud of, and encourage them, you know, to take part. So I think that's something I'd like to see happen. I'd like, and maybe Mary Brown could comment on that. I don't know if she's still around. No, she's not.
I'm not sure she is.
So can I just come in briefly? One thing that I've seen in other local authorities that I would really love to see in Birmingham, and particularly in Quinton, is that the leaving grass verges to go to meadows and
Yes.
roundabouts. I don't know if anyone's been in Solihull, but some of the grass verges and roundabouts in Solihull look absolutely beautiful. So I'm trying to work with, well, I am working with Wazim Zafar, cabinet member for roads and transport, to look at doing that and actually having that in Quinton, because it's just such a fantastic resource for bees and other insects. It looks fantastic. So it's just a matter of working. As I've gone around the country, you see some local authorities who've really embraced this, and it's just wonderful. And of course, it means that the places don't look tatty. You haven't got to trim after you've mowed. It cuts down on the littering. So so hopefully we'll be moving towards more of that in years to come.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think that our local nature reserve, that has set the example. It compares with anything else in Birmingham.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thanks for all of the comments. Right, so we now enter the stage of the meeting where we're going to discuss the ward plan. So I think first off, I need to say a massive thank you to Kate, who initially put together a kind of a rough working document, which has then gone through 3 consultation processes, I think, with members of the community that volunteered to get involved and help to refine it. So I think we're now at a place where we have a a document which will very much still be a working document, but it hopefully highlights priorities and hopefully some action points and things that we can start laying the foundations for and start delivering on between kind of now and next year. The other thing which is worth highlighting is that obviously next May there are full council elections, so who knows who will be sitting and chairing this meeting in 12 months' time. But the ward plan theoretically will follow the council term, if you like, so it will be renewed and refreshed in May, June next year. Equally, it is a working document, so I think we'll probably have towards the end of the year or the start of 2022 a period where we'll kind of sit down, review what actions have been taken so far, the progress made, and then see what can be kind of stepped up at that point in the new year. So I hope that people have, I know some of you were in the kind of consultation meetings, but I hope everybody's had a chance to kind of whiz through it before the meeting. I would stress that, as I say, it's been through a significant process already. So at this point, we really are hoping that we can just kind of make any absolute final little tweaks, or if we've missed anything that's glaringly obvious that needs to be included, then of course we can look at that. But ideally, this is a kind of adoption moment for this ward plan. I'm not sure if perhaps I could bring it up on screen, if that might be easier. Kate's not shaking her head or looking like I'm crazy with that suggestion, so let's go with that. Beverly, do you think you could bring it up for us if you're there?
Yes, I'll put it up for you.
Thank you very much.
Oh no, you didn't. Yeah, I was just going to see how you were. I didn't realise you had a little snooze in.
I'm going to take the liberty of muting Sam, so I don't think we need to be in the living room. Okay.
Bear with me a second, I'm still trying to find.
That's fine.
Okay, I've got it now for you.
Right.
Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. So, Kate, do you want to jump in? So I know that this the kind of titles of the priorities link into various things at the council.
Yeah, so so initially I just looked very broadly about some broad areas that I felt should be in the ward plan and link them to the ideas that we talked about in the first instance. We have gone through, we have pulled it, we've taken some bits out that perhaps should be in. But I think, this is something that we're going to be working to really over the next 10 months, and then it will prove as a guide as we go into, after the all-up elections, as we go into the next 4 years. So I was trying not to be too precious about it. So really it just comes under the priorities. I think we've got it down, Dominic, to 9 priorities.
Yeah.
And so if we want to just go through, can you put on priority 1, the pedestrian and road safety and parking?
I think
Okay, so
broadly, this kind of section highlights a lot of the things that we've already kind of mentioned or that have been updated from highways. We wanted them to be on the ward plan, although they're already kind of being delivered, or will be in the next few months. We thought they should definitely be on there. And then some of the things are issues which are either myself and or Kate or a community member, or in some cases Preet Gill, the MP, are kind of focused on and are moving forward. So I don't think there's anything controversial in this section particularly. So we've got speed cushions, which we know about on Simmons Drive, speed watch groups, which we've discussed in this meeting, speed cameras on Hagley Road West and West Boulevard, which I know that everybody involved is trying to push for them to be put in place. And then there's a bit of information here about a policing scheme for parking, which obstructs pavements and things. Then on the next page, thanks Beverly, we've got bringing primary schools together to have a travel to school summit, whereby we just bring all of the schools together and into one building and have a discussion with them about how to facilitate better transport to school. And I know a lot of people in Quinton, but also in neighbouring Harborne and across the city have had issues with private scooters being left in various places. So we're going to explore what can be done to kind of make them less obstructive, if you like, on the pavement. So I know that's something which is happening citywide, and there's a new focus group at the council to deliver on. And then I mentioned the double curbs earlier in the meeting, and equally the bollards I mentioned earlier in the meeting. Any comments on priority 1? Elliot, you've got your hand up. Do you want to jump in?
Sorry, I was on an earlier part, which is come at the end. 2 priorities, priority 8 and 9, seem to have sort of crept in. I've been looking, back to the original outline of what the ward priorities were, and they, mobility strategy and sustainability, were not part of the ward priorities that were agreed some time ago. The other 7 all are have come up repeatedly, and I'm quite happy to see them there. I just
put them in, Elliot, because they're city priorities. But when we get to those, we can negotiate. If you don't want them in, they can be taken out. But they're there because they're city priorities.
And Kate, they may be right for the next iteration of the, what are our priorities question. But this, that was my only issue. And thanks, Dom.
No, that's fine. Any other comments on priority 1? Excellent. This is going swimmingly. Let's hope the next 8 priorities go in the same direction. Right, so priority 2, we've got management of crime and disorder. So again, we've already mentioned the street watch exercises. We've got in there discussing with the police how to go about having better contact with the police from the community. So whether that is doing as we have done, which is bringing the police to all ward forums to provide an update as we ordinarily would do, or whether actually there could be the reinstatement of the police liaison board or committee, which I know used to run, so that issues could be brought directly to the police, and that would be an open forum. We've got asking police to provide information on local crime issues and working out what mechanism that should be to report back to the community, which links to the previous one. Encouraging the setting up of more neighbourhood watch schemes, and expanding the availability of crime prevention literature. So a lot of that feeds back into how we better engage with the police, put measures in place to ensure the speedy removal of any traveller encampments. That's already been done, and Kate will know more on that. It's more in the plan because it's being done, and we need to publish how that process is carried out. And then we've got illegal motorbike riding in Woodgate Valley, and I guess elsewhere in Quinton as well, which we're going to try and work with the police to work out what can be done, because I know it's a long-term issue. Kate, anything that you wanted to add from that section?
No, I don't think so. The city's now got a traveller encampment, so we can move travellers off fairly quickly now. We haven't had travellers in the last 2 years, probably mainly because of COVID and the pandemic. So we will just have to see if they do arrive, how quickly we're able to move them on. But hopefully it'll be quicker than we've been able to in past.
Barry, I see you floating fingers.
Yeah, I hope this is heard in the right way. I don't know how many people are on here tonight. It's less than 20, I think, of which some people are in employment as part of community work. Some people aren't. The same thing happens with the ward forum meeting. The ward planning meeting. The same thing happens in the Quinton conversation. I'm sure the same thing is happening in blooming Quinton. We have a group of people that are obviously going to be part of all this, but I just feel that there is such an amount of ideas and talking going on that actually Quinton needs something definitive moving forward at the moment. I know COVID's locked down things like the choir where there's 80 people, There's been some superb developments at the Court Oak allotments, which I welcome, but that's a small group as well. Whereas when we're looking at these bigger issues, especially crime and youth problems, which are a great concern to a lot of people. I mean, Sam's just highlighted one of those things with cylinders and so on, that we actually need to get in place with money quickly, things that make people lifted in Quinton and give a sense of safety and somewhere to go and something to do. Highfield Farm Park being one of them. Obviously, Quinton Meadows and Woodgate Valley are benefiting from the growth, the need for outdoor space. Obviously, Blooming Quinton's done a great job by lifting the area around the co-op and hopefully other areas. We need quick fixes. I'm not saying we don't need long-term fixes, but I think we need to shift our emphasis on this year. What are we getting now? What are we doing for this community? We're saying that the community needs this, that, or the other. Let's listen to what the community tells us they want as well, because I'm aware that the ward plan was drawn up really by a small group of people many moons ago. The same people who are here tonight, by the way. So I hope that doesn't sound negative. I'm just trying to think that we need to reshift and work together a little bit more quickly to get in funding, not for talking, not for networking and all the rest of it, but actually for now.
Yeah, can I just come in? Before the reference group disbanded themselves, they'd actually put a bid in for some funding for a development worker who'll be working with the Edgbaston neighbourhood networks, Gateway Family Services, and that group. So that might be somebody who can lead on this kind of thing.
Why do we need a lead, Kate? Why do we have to bring people in to take a lead? Is a lead not there when?
Well, if you don't want a development worker working in Quinton, we don't have to have one.
Listen. You're taking that too simplistically. I'm saying that there is enough ideas knocking around. We keep wanting to pay development workers on £20,000 a year when actually a bin at the park costs 500 and we haven't got it.
Yeah, I think the problem is we need an engine here because we've got the same people, as you've said, coming to the same meeting, and we all have a finite amount of time that we can develop. You know, that I'm just telling you something that the reference group did. They've worked out where the grant could come from. They've put a bid in. That's something that might help.
There's a green social prescriber. There's a health social prescriber already in Quinton. There's another one planned, I think, for Gateway, and now there's a green social prescriber being talked about. We're getting so many prescribers who are coming in to help, but that's not really what Quinton needs at the moment. I don't feel. I think we need more rangers. I think we need more facilities at the park. I think we need some funding available to do up the other areas besides the co-op, the shopping areas with bins.
That's something that we need to get a group together if that's what you want to do, to put a bid in, to have to see what bids are available, to see what can be done. I mean, it's it has to be driven by somebody. The reference group went out, found out what they felt was needed. They've done that. It's not costing Quinton anything. Can I?
We're on a bit of a tangent, so I'm conscious that we need to get back to the words on the paper at some point. Kate, do you know, post reference group moving aside, do you know where that funding or that grant and that worker sits now? Is that still going to be pursued? Is that something which is gone now, or?
No, I think it's sitting with the Edgbaston Neighbourhood Network group. Okay. So
so there is a section, one of the priorities further down, Barry, is on community engagement and cohesion. So I think that might be some of what you've been saying about, having more people that aren't just the same people at the ward forum repeatedly kind of driving agendas and being involved in the conversation. So perhaps we can have a bit of a discussion around that when we get to that priority. Were there any other broader points on priority 2 whilst we're on this page?
Sorry, can I just come in? Just got the one point while it's in my head. We've already got a community link worker in Quinton from the ENDS project called Deb Upton. So we're having another one alongside Deb and the social prescriber.
It's completely different roles, Barry.
Yes, I know.
Deb's working with the adults. We've got Catherine in that group working with children and young people. It's just a completely different role. So they're all things that people are putting bids in for. There's people working across, across the ward, doing more with less.
Thank you very much. I'm taking it there's no more comments on priority 6. So we're on to priority 3, which I know has a broad title for priority 3, which is all focused around protection and improvement of ward assets. So that's been broken into kind of 3 sub-priorities, if you like, with different types of assets. So the first one here is around environmental issues and street scene. So I believe this has been on the plan for a while, and I know it's something residents come to us a lot about, street cleaning sweepers, and understanding what programme that is on, so that I guess Kate and I are able to hold street cleaning, the council to account when those aren't coming as frequently as they should, or what the appropriate mechanism is to report things that need street sweepers. So that's on there. Encouraging residents and community groups to get involved in litter picks, which I know is happening. So there's great kind of activity in the last year with that coming up. More and more residents coming forward to set up groups. Identifying problem passageways to make sure they're on a programme of cleaning regularly. Adding or relocating street bins where possible. Improving signage for litter, and then running campaigns against dog fouling. I know Elliot is itching to tell me that many of these things aren't a plan, but they are in the document for good reason, and some of these things do have to be reactive. Going out for a survey about where we should locate a bin probably isn't the best thing, and over time me and Kate will pick up more and more information from people about where bins should be, including yourselves. So I hope you'll forgive us for not having specific plans for some of these. Are there any specific comments on priority 3A? Other than you, Elliot.
Be fair, Dom, I actually wrote 3A, 3B and 3C.
Very good.
From all the notes that we took at one of the meetings.
Fantastic, thank you. Excellent, let's whiz through to 3B then. So this is focused around buildings, allotments, parks, and some green spaces in there. And so we've got supporting the Quinton to become a more active community hub, which has been discussed today. I know that myself and Kate are kind of involved in that to see how they can be supported. Quinton Library and getting them back off the ground from COVID and looking at their opening hours. The Children's Centre at 4 Dwellings, what's happening with that land, doing an inquiry into that, and Quinton Police Station, the future of that building, which I know has been a long-term issue with lots of people involved and wanting to see it put to good use. So that's all in there. And that's it for 3B. I like these, Elliot. They're short subsections. Any comments generally?
Don, there's a follow-up to a commitment that John Clancy made a long time ago to make sure that all of the ward assets were identified and listed, and I think it followed questions at Ward Forum maybe 5 years ago about what do we own and why do people sell it off before we even know it's there or going. We may not have picked that up somewhere in this.
Off the top of my head, I don't think that is in kind of having an asset directory wouldn't be a bad idea. Barry?
Sorry, I've trolled through. I've spent from 7 o'clock this morning till 5:30 tonight in my dressing gown, trolling through history. John Clancy did actually provide quite a detailed list of assets, which was an amazing amount of addresses and so on that I've got here. So I'm going to spend several days now trolling through lots and lots and lots of information. But I have got that the start of all that asset list from street to street to street here.
Right.
If you ask me off the top of my head what date he brought it, he didn't come to many ward meetings, but he did bring it at one point. Can you not remember that, Kate?
I remember he was the first person I remember using the phrase community assets.
Yeah.
I don't really, I haven't got a copy of that piece of paper.
Yeah,
So when I was elected, I kind of, well, as you know, I started to put together for myself some ideas of what was in the ward.
No, this was after you were elected. It's only probably 3-4 years ago, or it may even have been when we did the ward plan when John chaired it. I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry. The difference actually is, Kate, that the list you provided was a much more dynamic list of who's doing what and where and what exists. And much of what I think John was compiling was piece of land in this corner, police station.
So it's probably something that just comes
truly capital assets, solid lumps.
So it was probably the list of the social housing that was owned by the council in the area and
those sorts
land
of things, and bits of land that suddenly go up for sale, and because no one wanted them, no one knew they were available to be wanted. Yeah, it's not for a long discussion now. I think we should revive that and add it to next.
All kinds of bits of land all over Quinton that it's almost impossible sometimes to find out who owns them.
Barry, I don't know if you're still there, I can't see you. Would I be right in thinking that that's a physical printout that you have that you're trawling through rather than a digital copy?
Sorry, hold on.
Yes.
Thank you, Elliot.
Retying your dressing gown, sir.
You can't beat paper. You get lost on a computer, as you saw me do earlier on.
That's fine. I wonder if at some point either Kate or I could borrow that and scan it in so that we've got a copy of it and we can.
Absolutely, they're £5 a sheet of paper. Okay. Yeah.
Good. So moving on to 3C, is it we're on now? Yep. So this is around parks and green spaces. This one, sorry. So we've got a 12-month focus in the ward plan on Highfield Farm Recreation Ground, or 4D's Park, which I know lots of people here are involved in, particularly focused around phase 3 of that area and what that development will include. Convening a meeting of the green space / community organisations to discuss a vehicle for grant applications and things like that. I know there's a few different kind of areas in Quinton that could be looked at. And then the third one here is tree planting and maximising opportunities, either with existing partners like Trees for Life, but equally I've put here Jubilee tree planting. I think that's called get my words out, the Queen's Green Canopy, in aid of her Jubilee, which is coming up, and they are supporting tree planting campaigns across the country, I think. So Peter, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a few comments at the moment, which I'd like to elaborate on and to discuss, but not necessarily now. But what I would like to say is that in respect to 2 and 3 actions, first of all, to point out that there are significant green spaces in addition to Highfield Farm Recreation Ground, such as Quinton Meadows Local Nature Reserve and Pitt's Wood, which is a rare, very rare ancient wood in the middle of an urban area. Whilst there are opportunities, and I support this, for tree planting in the ward, nature recovery requires a much broader approach in terms of enhancing existing habitats and creating new ones to improve biodiversity. Now, meadows, both, and I think as Kate has already mentioned, meadows, both large and small, are particularly beneficial for a huge variety of insects, including essential pollinators. And I'd just like to see a change in 3. We're talking here about something much broader than just tree planting. We're talking about nature recovery. So I'd like to see this revised, this particular section, and also to question who who's going to be involved, or who's going to see this meeting of green space community organisations to create a vehicle for grant applications focused on green spaces. Who is going to actually carry this through? And really, I don't quite understand at the present time what is going to be the role, and who is going to be chosen under the section by who, right? By who, and we've got different people listed. I'd like that to be, to be looked at, so that we get a wider involvement. Thank you.
That's very good. Thank you, Peter. I think that's probably down to the wording that we've put in these boxes, that it's not as clear as it could be. So we've kind of accidentally blurred point 1 and 2, I suppose. When we're talking about the focus on Highfield Farm Recreation Ground, that is purely because we know that there are potential grants that could be applied for to facilitate the extension of the kind of park. And obviously that's what quite a few people are working on. Point 2 relates to the fact that Highfield Farm Recreation Ground does not have any kind of body which at the moment would be able to apply for those grants. As you'll know from your work with Pittswood, to apply for those kind of grants, you need to have a dedicated bank account and be a registered organisation. So point 2 is really linking more to Highfield Recreation Ground grants for the next 6 months or so than more broadly. But we put it in there as a separate second point. I think really to get across that we'd like there to be better facilitation across the board with green space groups, including yourself, whether it's the Meadows Consultative Committee, Woodgate Valley Consultative Committee, Pittswood, Blooming Quinton, and all of these different groups in kind of one place where they can have open discussion and work out where grants or money could be coming from and what vehicle that needs to be put through. And so I know Pittswood have obviously supported grants for other groups. Is that necessarily the best way for that to happen? And that's why it's in the plan. I hope that makes some sense. Kate,
Right.
is that accurate?
Yes,
I think so. I can see Barry and Elliot with hands up.
Can I just say, I think Peter put it very eloquently earlier and again in this discussion. I think the heading for 3 is nature recovery, not tree planting, and tree planting is part of it. That's my first point. And the second point would be this needs somebody. It's not just a do. It needs a plan. And so that's quite right, and I would totally support the setting. I think the ward forum has to decide who's going to work on it and give them a timetable to deliver something of a plan, short, medium, and long term.
I think I've got Barry. Do you want to jump in, and then I think Claire, do you have your hand up over there?
Yeah.
Okay, Barry, and then we'll go to
Go on, Claire. You go first. They've all heard my voice by now.
I think John O'Shea in the council did talk the other year about getting different kind of mowing system of the grass verges in place. And if you notice, the actual grass on the verges is allowed to grow a little bit longer. We are allowed to see some daisies and wildflowers, but it doesn't grow that long. I don't think people realise that unless we encourage the pollinators to come into the nature recovery, we also lose the birds, because the birds eat the pollinators and the insects. So it's a whole big plan that's got to come from the council and Birmingham Open Spaces organisation as well as us. We can't just do it just for Quinton. It's a whole Birmingham plan that's got to be fed in to the situation. That's me finished.
Thanks, Barry, and then over to Elaine.
Yeah, sorry, because I get a little bit bothered here because I think Highfield is not being seen as an integral linking part of green spaces. What Highfield was a barren field that nobody went to because it was frightening and intimidating. You walked through it to get somewhere else. You can't walk through it because of the side path, and we've already raised that issue, and the mud down the bottom. So Quinton Meadows is shut off, and Woodgate Valley is shut off to the whole population of Quinton, which has free 365-day access. So I hate to bang on about Highfield Recreation Ground, but it is integral to the green connectivity that we have in Quinton. So, but also we're talking about, we're all on here. I've got a big garden. I grow plants. I encourage people. I give plants away. And so I'm fully into the green agenda. Absolutely. But we also need to remember that people want other things as well. They want somewhere to go for their kids to play. They want somewhere to go for their mental health, to sit and chill, like two men we met the other day having a beer at the park every dinner time. They sit, they walk up, they have a beer, then walk through, catch a bus home. They're 64-year-olds. So please, can we not start sectioning out Highfield and Blooming Quinton or green spaces? We're all part of the same process, but we also need to be realistic and listen to people who don't have our agenda over green. The people, we haven't spent any money on that park other than what was made available 5 years ago, the second tranche, 7 years ago, the first tranche. There's no investment in Highfield other than that.
Elaine, do you want to come in? You're on mute at the moment.
I'm off mute now. Very, very minor point. A little bit wary about saying all applications have to come via the ward forum. There's nothing wrong with having ward forum and able to coordinate. But, you know, if you were to turn around and say, Pix Wood, you've got to come by us, then I think that would be completely wrong. So just bear in mind, we want things to be organic. We can't dictate to everybody else. There's some fantastic work that's gone on. You know, Barry doing a brilliant job, but we've also be careful not to try and stifle but it's to enable and not be to be directive. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yes, I understand where Barry's coming from, and to some extent I agree with him, but I'd like to point out that even with Highfield Farm Recreation Ground, there has been some investment. For example, in 2000, there was an extensive planting of trees, the Millennium effort. Also, the council have obviously taken the message to heart now, and they have started to have what I would sort of call meadow strips in Highfield as well. So it's all part of, yes, all part of one thing in terms of benefit to people. But what we're concerned about is to make sure that it does, in particular nature recovery, and how that can be achieved, and all in different green spaces, especially, as I say, the wonderful nature reserve that we have, and a quite unique ancient wood, to make sure that they are recognised. What I've felt is that they haven't been actually properly recognised yet, and that's what I'm certainly going to keep pushing. But it doesn't mean that I'm not interested in having much better formal recreation for people, not just at Highfield but elsewhere, any other park in Quinton, for example. So let's not think that we're on a different,
Opposing side.
Sorry, Vinnie?
We're not on opposing sides.
We're not on opposing sides at all. No, quite.
Okay.
Very good. So I think it's evident that this is a passionate area, and all of the people that have very broadly similar views, but perhaps need further discussion on development plans that could go into this kind of plan and this meeting, this grand meeting that could be convened. And then equally, if we amend point 3, rather than say tree planting, to put that more broadly in nature recovery and add in perhaps some meadow facilitation and things like that, then I think that will probably make everybody relatively comfortable with that section. So if we move on to priority 4, please, Beverly. Thank you. Roads, pavements, lights and trees. So ensuring residents can feed issues for potholes and pavement repairs, tree work, etc. directly to the highway steward for Quinton Ward, which is Stuart at the moment. We've put in here regarding the update, the Street Watch group can be used as a reporting mechanism, which is very much something which is already happening, using the Fix My Street app, which tends to get pretty speedy results from the council to fix defects with the road or pavements, and equally the use of notice boards and the new Facebook groups as well to encourage that to take place. Then we've got hold local resident reviews with the Quinton Highways steward and monitor implementation of repairs requests. Reintroducing long-term planned highways maintenance and road improvements work and get the road programs into that. Electric car charging points, which Kate has touched on. We've got cycle paths and routes, promoting cycling and developing new routes with better signage in there, which will feed into some of the council and government's priorities on active travel. As you know, Quinton Road West will be resurfaced, Simmons Drive, speed cushions. Hopefully nothing too controversial in there. Any comments? Elliot, was that a momentary hand thrown in the air?
No, it was a thumbs up to avoid having to interrupt you.
Oh, excellent. Elaine, is that a new hand? No. Peter, is that a new hand? Take that as a no. Great stuff. Moving on to priority 5, community engagement and cohesion. This is Barry, you might want to come back in here at some point. So we've got better publicity and increased participation in ward forums. So that links back to what we've just discussed in terms of notice boards, social media, and we're looking at having residents chair the ward forums again as they previously did, and equally adding better time management to the ward forums, which hoping today as a rough template, having allocated times has worked relatively well. Pioneer neighbourhood mentor scheme with Northfield. So as you'll know, that's something which happened a couple of years ago when we were linked with Northfield, who are a pioneer neighbourhood. So we're trying to now, or Kate's looking into how that process of mentoring will continue or kind of restart, if you like, particularly with certain characters and the reference group and things moving along. So Kate's looking into that. Looking at the options within the council's white paper on working together in Birmingham's neighbourhoods, and that's something which Kate and I will look into and report back in terms of the options and recommendations. Thank you, Beverly. You skipped a page there. I'm not against it. So we've got that's it for section 5. Any comments?
Yep.
Carry on.
Elaine, you mentioned the ward forum. Look at us tonight, and you'll see that actually you're quite right. There's a few people here who have been very vocal over quite a number of years, but are still here, still making a difference. We need, and we have said very, very clearly that we need more and more people. They're not here. There's not particularly an influx of people here. The Quinton conversation is not particularly an influx of people coming here. Beverly, I think when I asked you, your circulation for this, the ward forum, something like 45 online. The notices that are sent out would never attract anybody to a ward forum, even if you put them all around the ward, because they don't tell anybody what a ward forum's about. There's no agenda. There's no, all it says is come and talk with your councillors. So we need better communication, if that's the name of the game. I put the notice up on the notice board. I didn't do the 8 shops I normally do. Right, engagement. Engagement comes from having a focal point. It used to be the pubs, or it used to be the churches, and still is. It used to be the working men's club where I grew up in Leicester. we don't have those institutions particularly anymore. The school gates, schools, they're not as community minded as they once were. You don't meet in the school that often to do stuff. So we've got a real problem. Cllr's found it extremely difficult to engage and bring forward new blood. Kerry and Becky are the two I can think of.
I don't think you can hear me, can you?
Yep.
Sorry.
I said, I don't think you can hear me.
I don't know.
This is Brian. Is that you, Brian?
Brian with a Y, yes. I only came across you tonight quite accidentally. And I shall have to go off in a minute because I'm expecting a phone call, but I'm not new blood, but I like to know what's going on in the area.
That's great. Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate that.
Where did you hear of us,
Can you
Brian?
bring lots of friends?
Brian, where did you hear of us?
I was just pottering on the, I don't know, it was Facebook or on my mobile, and it came up, and I hadn't got the app to get in, and I've managed to get the app to get in, although I'm 87.
We're chasing you up, Brian. Okay.
I know young Peter Beck somewhere along the line, but I think that, can't remember if I know Kerry Rickaby, but perhaps it's a mother I know.
Right. Well, it's great to see you here.
Well,
Brian. Please come.
I own Quinton, you see, because I've been here since 1937.
Oh well, you've got the rank.
Anyway, I'll join you again if I get a notification.
Can you give your email to Beverly?
Where's Beverly? Oh, email. Yes, Brian with a Y. Palser, Palser. Out of it. No, brian.palser@googlemail.com. That's better. Your memory goes when you get a bit older.
Thank you very much, Brian. And we'll make sure that you're invited to future ward forums. And I think actually that is a useful point. I only managed to get this evening's meeting advertised in some of the Facebook groups an hour or so before the meeting, which is my failure. But that's in the kind of better publicisation of these meetings with a bit more advance notice. But I take your point, Barry, about actually being more inviting to the ward forums. I wonder if there's something within the council that we can have a slightly more exciting poster that when we put them up on notice boards that look a little bit more inviting. Are there any other kind of broader points on this community engagement and cohesion area?
No, obviously the Best of Quinton event was to be a day to engage with people if the weather allowed us, but unfortunately COVID hasn't. But the park is a very, very social place where lots of people are convening now. That's the place to engage with people at the moment.
And I would add, we need the Quimborne to provide the indoor version of that.
Yeah. Okay, priority 6. Housing and private rented sector. So we've got in here, get the council's housing department to enforce tidy-ups of their properties where they have the power to enforce tenancy conditions, and also to make sure that the housing liaison board, which sadly we don't have Jim Nicol here this evening, but that they are kind of working with housing to flag any of those issues, and then when necessary involving myself and Kate to escalate. Then we've got hold biannual meetings with housing officers and housing liaison board to feedback on any issues and monitor exempt accommodation. That's in there, but it's kind of a day-by-day task for Kate and I as councillors.
I don't know whether I'm out of order. But are there 2 points I could mention?
Yes, if you can, Brian, before you have to answer that call.
Would we encourage people to cut their overgrowth, which is overhanging the pavement? Hold on. Just a second, Eric. Overhanging the pavements. And I know you've done speed control in Highfield, but I think the section of Ridgeacre Road between the bottom of Stony Lane and the shops by Tesco's. I walked up there the other day. They're doing at least 50 miles an hour, but Anyway, I'll answer my call and I'll come back to it at a later date.
Thank you, Brian.
Right, bye. Hello. Are you there?
I've muted Brian. Okay, any other comments on housing and private rented sector? Okay, priority 7, we've got facilities for young people, elderly and disadvantaged people. So in the first section, we've got liaising with Gateway, ENDS and the schools about current provision for young people and developing a priority plan. So that's going to be quite a broad engagement. Further developing social prescribing activities with partners and local GPs, health systems, etc. That falls into Gateways and ENDS responsibilities. Oh, and sorry, that also links to integrating with the Future Parks Accelerator and walking groups, tours in the NHS. Anything within that section to comment on?
There's a major error in the spelling of walking group.
Oh goodness. No, this isn't the final version.
Whoever did it, and it's probably me, put 2 Ks in walking. But apart from that, I think it's good.
I think there could have been worse errors. Probably got off lightly on that one, so to speak. Any broad comments on the priorities? No, good. Mobility strategy. So the 20-minute strategy, having that embedded in local mobility with practical measures, and then ensuring that the combined authority consider the community and councillors' views in transport plans within trams and buses. So the first one of those is really Kate, and the second one is really me, I think. Is there anything you wanted to add, Kate, or any questions?
I just go back to the point I made at the start, Dominic, of this particular section, which was neither of these was expressed as a ward priority at the meeting that put together the headings for priorities.
I think to echo Kate's point, there's a certain element of the ward plan which we have to consider the broader city plans to make sure that they're actually consulting with us, or that we're maximising opportunities from them. So I guess that's why that's in there, and Kate was keen to have it in there. The final one here is on sustainability, which is a broad point, which is developing and implementing a local sustainability strategy, which again is really linking back to the council's climate declaration, climate emergency declaration, and the plans that they have and are going to be developing to make sure again that we're tying into them as much as we can, where there's benefit for us too. Any comments on those final sections? Excellent. That was a much smoother process than it could have been, I think. Kate,
congratulations.
Steered us through that brilliantly.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't know if, as it's a ward plan, which I believe Kate and I technically have kind of ownership of, if it's something which needs to have a kind of a vote of approval, but as there wasn't that many people with major objection, I think we might even actually get away with a majority vote in favour, which would make me feel better about accountability.
Right, there's 6 of us besides you 2.
We don't actually need your approval. I think I would love to know that you were.
We've got a split vote, okay.
I think the really important point is to actually say that, to be positive and say, with all its shortcomings, it's still a plan. And that forms the basis of creating a better plan, and also the basis for actually evidencing to the council for the various grants and whatever else is going. So it can serve its purpose.
Yeah, I think it's been a really good team effort, and we have now got something which I think we all sense a little bit of ownership for, and it puts us in that good space when we've got all ups across the city. We'll have things to tick off, things that we've done, things that we can be proud of, and then a step through to the next thing.
Yes, Barry, we've already counted your vote in approval. You can put your hand down.
Oh, 2. No, just to say thank you. This is by far the best Zoom meeting we've had, Teams meeting we've had. So thank you to everybody. But just an appeal, please. It's all about outcomes. It's not about networks and talking and plans and ideas and what we'd like and wow. It's about the outcome. Have we got stuff? Are we achieving stuff? There are examples. Yep, absolutely. But we need more.
And if I'm allowed one final comment, is clearly it's actually a starting point, not an end. There's such a lot to actually turn this into usable material.
Yeah, I think broadly speaking, Kate and I will use this as a kind of a fallback Bible, if you like, so that whenever we are having meetings with community groups or ENDS or Gateway or TORS or whoever it is, we can refer back to this document and try and direct their work into that, which helps us to hold those organisations to account if they're working in our ward and vice versa. Good.
That's
Excellent.
great. I can hear a match starting somewhere.
Oh.
And also, can I just flag up that I'm doing my first surgery tomorrow in 15 months. So if you know anybody who needs to come and engage with me who doesn't have access to the internet or telephone, hasn't done that, I'm going to be at the St Boniface in a gazebo on the front lawn tomorrow for my first surgery of 2021, and I'll be there from 11 o'clock. It's 11 till 12, but I'll be there longer if people need me, and it's the first and third Wednesday of the month. So if you know anybody who needs to have a chat with me, I'll be there.
Fantastic. Well, I think that I'm afraid we didn't have a great deal of time to have any other business on the agenda. But if there is anything that people want to raise and discuss at the next Ward Forum, please let myself or Kate know, and I will bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Any chance of a date, Dominic?